Welcome back to the whole Bible series. This week we were going through the book of First Kings. So First Kings is known as Malachim in the Tanakh. It's part of the former prophets. In our Bible, First Kings is part of the Old Testament historical books. So First Kings covers the story of the nation of Israel and a succession of kings from David to Jehoshaphat and Ahaziah. First and Second Kings were originally one book and covered the reign of the kings from Solomon on. And for this reason, they're also known in the Septuagint as Third and Fourth Kingdoms, coming after the books of First and Second Samuel or First and Second Kingdoms. For more information on this, go back to episode 10. First Kings is the 11th book of the Bible. Who wrote First Kings and when? Hebrew tradition actually holds that Kings was written by the prophet Jeremiah, although the book itself gives no clues as to who the author is. However, because Second Kings speaks of occurrences from 561 BC, it must be dated at the earliest to middle or late 6th century BC. Again, for more information, go back to episode 10. First Kings is broken up into 5 sections. And this is where it falls here on the timeline that we've been using. First Kings covers approximately 970 BC to 850 BC. So this covers from the end of David's reign to the beginning of Ahaziah and Jehoshaphat in around 850 BC. So where we left off at the end of 2 Samuel. King David had united the tribes and led well as a good king and a military tactician. He delivered all of the promised land that God had promised to Abraham and to Moses. And yet David struggled with his personal sin and showed that he was just another sinful person that God used, not because he was great, but because he was the man that God chose. And he gave us a good example of somebody who, even in sin, his heart belonged to Yahweh. He always wanted to follow Yahweh. And so he was loyal in that fact. And because of that, God chose to extend his reign forever. Let's get to the first section. Chapter 1, verse 1. Now King David was old and advanced in years, and although they covered him with clothes, he could not get warm. Therefore his servants said to him, "Let a young woman be sought for my lord the king, and let her wait on the king and be in his service. Let her lie in your arms, that the lord the king may be warm." So they sought for a beautiful young woman throughout the territory of Israel and found Abishag the Shunammite and brought her to the king. The young woman was very beautiful, and she was of service to the king and attended him, but the king knew her not. There is a sexual innuendo there. The king did not know her, means that he did not sleep with her. Moving on. Now Adonijah, the son of Haggith, exalted himself, saying, "I will be king." So this is David's son. And he prepared for himself chariots and horsemen and 50 men to run before him. His father had never at any time displeased him by asking, "Why have you done thus and so?" He was a very handsome man, and he was born next after Absalom. Remember in 2 Samuel that Absalom was killed after he tried to overthrow David and take the kingship for himself. Verse 7. He conferred with Joab, the son of Zeruiah, and with Abiathar the priest, and they followed Adonijah and helped him. But Zadok the priest and Benaiah of the son of Jehoiada And Nathan the prophet and Shimei and Ray and David's mighty men were not with Adonijah. So his son gathers a lot of these men and starts building a strong leadership group around himself. But he leaves out these other men who were loyal to David. That would be Zadok the priest, Benaiah, and Nathan the prophet, as well as David's mighty men. So these are his warriors and his military leaders, other than Joab. Let's go to verse 9. Adonijah sacrificed sheep, oxen, and fatted cattle by the serpent stone, which is beside En Rogel, and he invited all his brothers, the king's sons, and all the royal officials of Judah, but he did not invite Nathan the prophet, or Benaiah, or the mighty men, or Solomon his brother. So again, he's having the celebration. He does not invite Solomon either. Then Nathan said to Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon, "Have you not heard that Adonijah the son of Haggith had become king, and David our Lord does not know it? Now therefore come, let me give you advice, that you may save your own life and the life of your son Solomon. Go in at once to King David and say to him, Did you not, my lord the king, swear to your servant, saying, Solomon your son shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne? Why then is Adonijah king? Then while you are still speaking with the king, I will come in after you and confirm your words." So Bathsheba went to the king in his chamber. Now the king was very old, and Abishag the Shunammite was attending the king. Bathsheba bowed and paid homage to the king, and the king said, "What do you desire?" She said to him, "My lord, you swore to your servant by the Lord your God, saying, Solomon your son shall reign after me, and that he shall sit on my throne. And now behold, Adonijah is king. Although you, my lord the king, do not know it, he has sacrificed oxen, fatted cattle, and sheep in abundance, and has invited all the sons of the king, Abiathar the priest, and Joab the commander of the army. But Solomon your servant he has not invited. And now, my lord the king, the eyes of all Israel are on you, to tell them who shall sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. Otherwise it shall come to pass, when my lord the king sleeps with his fathers, that I and my son Solomon will be counted offenders." While she was still speaking with the king, Nathan the prophet came in, and they told the king, "Here is Nathan the prophet." And when he came in before the king, he bowed before the king and his face to the ground. And Nathan said, "My lord the king, have you said, Adonijah shall reign after me, that he shall sit on my throne? For he has gone down this day and sacrificed oxen, fatted cattle, and sheep in abundance, and has invited all the king's sons, the commanders of the army, and Abiathar the priest. And behold, they are eating and drinking before him, and saying, Long live King Adonijah. But me, your servant, and Zadok the priest, and Benaniah, the son of Jehoiada, and your servant Solomon, he has not invited. Has this thing been brought about by my lord the king? And you have not told your servants who would sit on the throne of my lord the king after him?" The king David answered him, "Call Bathsheba to me." So she came into the king's presence and stood before the king. And the king swore, saying, "As the Lord lives, who has redeemed my soul out of every adversity, as I swore to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, saying, Solomon your son shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne in my place. Even so will I do this day." Then Bathsheba bowed with her face to the ground and paid homage to the king and said, "May my lord the king David live forever." King David said, "Call to me Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada." So they came before the king, and the king said to them, "Take with you the servants of your lord, and have Solomon my son ride on my mule, and bring him down to Gihon. And let Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet there anoint him king over Israel. Then blow the trumpet and say, Long live King Solomon. You shall then come after him, and he shall come and sit on my throne, for he shall be king in my place." and I have appointed him to be ruler over Israel and over Judah. And Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, answered the king, Amen, may the Lord, the God of my lord the king, say so. And the Lord, or excuse me, as the Lord has been with my lord the king, even so he may be with Solomon, and make his throne greater than the throne of my lord King David. So Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and the Cherethites and the Pelethites went down and had Solomon ride on King David's mule and brought him to Gihon. There Zadok the priest took the horn of oil from the tent and anointed Solomon, and they blew the trumpet, and all the people said, Long live King Solomon. And all the people went up after him, playing on pipes and rejoicing with great joy, so that the earth was split by their noise. Adonijah and all the guests who were with him heard it as they were finishing feasting. And when Joab heard the sound of the trumpet, he said, What does this uproar in the city mean? While he was still speaking, behold, Jonathan the son of Abiathar, the priest, came. And Adonijah said, Come in, for you are a worthy man, and bring good news. Jonathan answered Adonijah, No, for our lord King David has made Solomon king, and the king has sent with him Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and the Cherethites and the Pelethites. And they had him ride on the king's mule. And Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet have anointed him king at Gihon, and they have gone up from there rejoicing, so that the city is in an uproar. This is the noise that you have heard. Solomon sits on the royal throne. Moreover, the king's servants came to congratulate our Lord King David, saying, May your God make the name of Solomon more famous than yours, and make his throne greater than your throne. And the king bowed himself on the bed. And the king also said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who has granted someone to sit on my throne this day, my own eyes seeing it. Then all the guests of Adonijah trembled and rose, and each went his own way. And Adonijah feared Solomon. So he arose and went and took hold of the horns of the altar. Then it was told Solomon, Behold, Adonijah fears King Solomon, for behold, he has laid hold of the horns of the altar, saying, Let King Solomon swear to me first that he will not put his servant to death with the sword. And Solomon said, If he will show himself a worthy man, not one of his hairs shall fall to the earth. But if wickedness is found in him, he shall die. So King Solomon sent, and they brought him down from the altar. And he came and paid homage to King Solomon. And Solomon said to him, Go to your house. I just want to point in a note here. Benaiah and the Cherethites and the Pelethites are all mentioned in the passage. You see here in the box to the left. So Benaiah was a son of the chief priest, and he was from the southern Judahite city of Kabzeel. David appointed Benaiah to be the commander of the Cherethites and the Pelethites, who were mercenary groups who were part of David's bodyguard and were among his mighty men. So it says here, this group was separate from the army and was probably established by David himself at Ziklag. That's where he was hiding in fear of Saul. And so David had brought on these mercenary groups and had put Benaiah over them. And so as Zadok and Nathan and Benaiah are going to make Solomon the king, they're always also taking all of David's military commanders, his mighty men, and these two groups of mercenaries with them. So while Adonijah may have some loyal, well-placed, powerful men on his side, Solomon has the backing of all of David's might. So then after that, David addresses Solomon and tells him how to be a good king. He exhorts him to remain faithful to Yahweh. And he also asks Solomon to repay Joab and Shimei for their evil. If you remember that Joab, who's David's military commander, had murdered a couple people that David was not pleased with. Also, Shimei was somebody who cursed David. So we can look here in the box. Here's a quote from last time from Samuel, or 2 Samuel. When King David came to Bahurim, there came a man out of the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera. And as he came, he cursed continually. And he threw stones at David and all the servants of King David, and all the people and all the mighty men who were on his right hand and his left. And Shimei had said as he cursed, get out, you man of blood, you worthless man. The Lord has avenged on you all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned, and the Lord has given the kingdom into the hand of your son Absalom. See, this evil is on you, for you are a man of blood. So after Absalom tried to take over the kingdom in 2 Samuel, David is fleeing from there, and this guy, Shimei, comes out and curses him, and he's part of the bloodline of Saul. So here, David asks Solomon to repay both Joab and Shimei for their evil when he's gone. Then David dies after reigning 40 years. And soon thereafter, Adonijah comes and tries to manipulate Bathsheba into convincing Solomon to allow him, Adonijah, to marry Abishag, who's the young, beautiful woman that was keeping David warm. And because of this request, Solomon finds that he's a wicked man, his oldest brother, and so he has them killed. Let's look at chapter 2, verse 26. And to Abiathar the priest, the king said, go to Anathoth, to your estate, for you deserve death. But I will not at this time put you to death, because you carried the ark of the Lord God before David my father, and because you shared in all my father's affliction. So Solomon expelled Abiathar from being priest to the Lord, thus fulfilling the word of the Lord that he had spoken concerning the house of Eli and Shiloh. So real quick, we see here that Solomon is now addressing all of the people who are supporting, or who had supported Adonijah in his attempt to take over the throne without David even being passed or having made a decision. So Solomon is now punishing all these people, and to Abiathar, he's taking him out. He's kicking him out of the priesthood and expelling him from Jerusalem. We see here where it says that in doing so, he's fulfilling the word of the Lord that Yahweh had spoken concerning the house of Eli and Shiloh. So Abiathar is a great grandson of Eli. And if you remember going back to 1 Samuel, Eli was a good priest, but his sons were evil. And because he did not correct his sons, God told him that he was going to remove his line from the priesthood. We then see that Solomon has Joab killed for his sin and his disloyalty, and Solomon eventually has Shimei killed also for his disobedience. Then Solomon marries a daughter of Pharaoh and has an alliance made with Egypt. And we find that Solomon maintains his loyalty to Yahweh. He follows in his father's footsteps, and he's loyal to Yahweh, and he seeks after what God wants him to do and God's will. And so God appears to him in a dream and offers him to give him one request. And Solomon asks for wisdom. And because he's pleased at what Solomon requested, God also grants him, in addition to his wisdom, riches and honor and a long life. So let's look here at an example of Solomon exercising his wisdom in chapter 3. Then 2 prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. The one woman said, "Oh, my lord, this woman and I live in the same house, and I gave birth to a child while she was in the house. Then on the third day after I gave birth, this woman also gave birth, and we were alone. There was no one else in the house or with us in the house. We were the only two in the house. And this woman's son died in the night because she lay on him. And she arose at midnight and took my son from beside me while your servant slept and laid him at her breast and laid her dead son at my breast. When I woke, or when I rose in the morning and to nurse my child, behold, he was dead. But when I looked closely at him in the morning, behold, he was not the child that I had born. But the other woman said, no, the living child is mine, and the dead child is yours. The first said, no, the dead child is yours, and the living child is mine. Thus they spoke to the king. And the king said, bring me a sword. So a sword was brought before him. And the king said, divide the living child in two, and give half to one and half to the other. Then the woman whose son was alive said to the king, because her heart yearned for her son, O my lord, give her the living child, and by no means put him to death. But the other said, he shall be neither mine nor yours, divide him. And the king answered and said, give the living child to the first woman, and by no means put him to death. She is his mother. And all of Israel heard of the judgment that the king had rendered, and they stood in awe of the king because they perceived that the wisdom of God was in him to do justice. So here we have a bit of an extreme example. It might seem a little off the wall and far-fetched to us, but this is an example of Solomon using his wit, his intelligence that God had given him. From there, we see that Solomon continues to govern well and continues to grow in both wisdom and in wealth. Let's look at chapter 5. Now Hiram, king of Tyre, sent his servants to Solomon when he had heard that they had anointed him king in place of his father, for Hiram always loved David. And Solomon sent word to Hiram, you know that my father could not build a house for the name of the Lord his God because of the warfare and with which his enemies surrounded him, until the Lord put them under the soles of his feet. But now the Lord has given, now that the Lord my God has given me rest on every side, there is neither adversary nor misfortune. And so I intend to build a house for the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord said to David my father, your son, whom I will set on the throne in your place, shall build a house for my name. So Solomon then purchases cedar wood from Lebanon and sets stone cutters to work in quarries, and he begins having people build the temple for Yahweh. And so the temple is completed around 957 BC after about 7 years of construction. Let's look at chapter 6, verse 11. Now the word of the Lord came to Solomon concerning this house that you are building. If you will walk in my statutes and obey my rules and keep all my commandments and walk in them, then I shall establish my word with you, which I spoke to David your father, and I will dwell among the children of Israel, and I will not forsake my people Israel. So here's a model and a picture of what the temple probably looked like based on the descriptions that we get. And so very similar to what we had earlier with the tabernacle. There is a sanctuary, and in this sanctuary there is a curtain that separates the holy place from the Holy of Holies, or the most holy place, and that's where the ark would sit. And so this temple is now built to house Yahweh, and he gives them a reminder here saying, hey, if you continue to follow my law, if you listen to me, if you're loyal to me, then I will continue to dwell here and to continue to bless the people of Israel. As this is going on, Solomon also builds himself a new palace next to the temple. And Solomon has all new temple furnishings remade, all coated in gold or bronze or whatever was designed as God wanted it for the tabernacle. And then the ark is brought to dwell within the most holy place. Let's look at verse 8, or chapter 8, verse 10. And then when the priests came out of the holy place, a cloud filled the house of the Lord, so that priests could not stand to minister because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. Then Solomon said, the Lord has said that he will dwell in thick darkness. I have indeed built you an exalted house, a place for you to dwell forever. Now it was in the heart of David my father to build a house for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. But the Lord said to David my father, whereas it was in your heart to build a house for my name, you did well that it was in your heart. Nevertheless, you shall not build the house, but your son who shall be born, and who shall build the name, let's go back. But your son who shall be born to you shall build the house for my name. Now the Lord has fulfilled his promise that he made, for I have risen in the place of David my father and sit on the throne of Israel, as the Lord promised, and I have built the house for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. And there I have provided a place for the ark, in which the covenant of the Lord that he made with our fathers when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. So Solomon then prays to dedicate the temple, and the people go and offer sacrifices to Yahweh. Get to chapter 9. As soon as Solomon had finished building the house of the Lord and the king's house and all that Solomon desired to build, the Lord appeared to Solomon a second time, as he had appeared to him at Gibeon. And the Lord said to him, I have heard your prayer and your plea, which you have made before me. I have consecrated this house that you have built by putting my name there forever. My eyes and my heart will be there for all time. And as for you, if you will walk before me as David your father walked, with integrity of heart and uprightness, doing according to all that I have commanded you and keeping my statutes and my rules, then I will establish your royal throne over Israel forever. As I promised your father David, saying, you shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel. But if you turn aside from following me, you and your children, and do not keep the commandments and my statutes that I have set before you, but go and serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut off Israel from the land that I have given them, and the house that I have consecrated for my name I will cast out of my sight, and Israel will be a proverb and a byword among all peoples. And this house will become a heap of ruins. Everyone passing by it will be astonished and will hiss, and they will say, why has the Lord done thus to the land and to this house? Then they will say, because they abandoned the Lord their God, who brought their fathers out of the land of Egypt, and laid hold on other gods, and worshiped them and served them. Therefore the Lord has brought all this disaster on them. So here God's reiterating the covenant with Solomon, as he has done with Moses and with David. And again, he gives them a warning that God will dwell here in the temple and will continue to bless Israel and the land as long as they follow him. But if they don't, then there will be consequences. So Solomon builds a great army and amasses many slaves. As he continues to grow greater and greater, he amasses lots of wealth, and nearby kingdoms, learning of his power and his wisdom, come and give him many gifts, including gold and all sorts of different spices and that kind of stuff. And we get to chapter 11. Now King Solomon loved many foreign women, along with the daughter of Pharaoh, Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidonian, and Hittite women, from the nations concerning which the Lord had said to the people of Israel, you shall not enter into marriage with any of them, neither shall they with you, for surely they will turn away your heart after other gods. Solomon clung to these in love. He had 700 wives, who were princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For when Solomon was old, his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not wholly true to the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. For Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. So Solomon did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and did not wholly follow the Lord as David his father had done. Then Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, and for Molech, the abomination of the Ammonites, on the mountain east of Jerusalem. And he did so for all his foreign wives who made offerings and sacrificed their gods. So Solomon here has a similar weak spot as David. He lusts after women, but here his is infinitely more. He lusts after not only Israelite women, but women from the surrounding countries, those that God had told them to stay away from. And because of that, his sin draws an even worse sin where he starts being led and following other gods. Let's look back at Exodus 34 here. Here's what God had said. Take care lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land to which you go, lest it become a snare to your midst, or in your midst. You shall tear down their altars and break their pillars and cut down their Asherah, lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land. And when they whore after their gods and sacrifice to their gods, and you were invited, you eat of the sacrifice, and you take their daughters for your sons, and their daughters whore after their gods, and make your sons whore after their gods. So Israel was called to tear down these altars and break their pillars. And here we have Solomon, who is giving in to his wives and building these pillars and these ashram for the gods of his wives. And because of this, his heart is turning away from Yahweh. And the Lord was angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice and had commanded him concerning this thing, that he should not go after other gods. But he did not keep what the Lord commanded. Therefore the Lord said to Solomon, since this has been your practice, and you have not kept my covenant and my statutes that I have commanded you, I will surely tear the kingdom from you and will give it to your servant. Yet for the sake of David your father, I will not do it in your days, but I will tear it out of the hand of your son. However, I will not tear away all the kingdom, but I will give one tribe to your son for the sake of David my servant, and for the sake of Jerusalem that I have chosen. So Yahweh then raises up adversaries to Solomon. So we have Hadad, the Edomite that pops up, Rezon of Syria, and Jeroboam the Ephraimite, who God promises to give him the 10 northern tribes, that he's going to be the king of the 10 northern tribes. And so Solomon tries to kill him, and Jeroboam flees to Egypt to escape Solomon's wrath until his death. Skip down to verse 41. Now the rest of the acts of Solomon and all that he did and his wisdom, are they not written in the books of the acts of Solomon? And the time that Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel was 40 years. And Solomon slept with his fathers and was buried in the city of David his father, and Rehoboam his son reigned after him in his place. So just a note here, it says that more of Solomon's acts are written in the book of the Acts of Solomon. There's a note here from the Lexham Bible Dictionary in the box. So the book of the Acts of Solomon is a lost canonical or non-canonical book that's mentioned in 1 Kings, which is said to contain the rest of the Acts of Solomon. The book of the Acts of Solomon may borrow details from state documents that were kept by an official recorder. The fact that the rest of the Acts are found in this book may indicate that 1 Kings 1 through 11 contain the initial portion of Solomon's Acts. The Acts of Solomon are also mentioned in 2 Chronicles, where they're said to be written in the Chronicles of Nathan the prophet and elsewhere. Other books mentioned in the Old Testament include the Book of the Wars of the Lord and the Book of Jasher. First through 2 Kings also mentions the Book of Chronicles of the Kings as a source. It is possible that the various books, including the Acts of Solomon, are descriptors more than titles and all refer to the same source. See also looking up another entry. So all these books mentioned here are books that we don't have, books that are lost, or as they said, there might be descriptors referring to things that are already written in the books of Chronicles, which we'll get to in a few weeks. Off to the second section. So Rehoboam, who is Solomon's son, goes to Shechem and goes to be crowned as king by all Israel. But as he does that, Jeroboam returns from Egypt. And so the people of Israel still agreed to make Rehoboam king if he will be kinder to them than Solomon was. Solomon had made them almost as slaves to build his temple. And so Rehoboam considers it, and he goes and gets counsel, and he comes back and he refuses. He says that he's going to be worse than his father Solomon was to the people of northern Israel. And so the people of Israel send Rehoboam back to Judah, and they make Jeroboam king over them. So then Rehoboam is then king only over Judah, including Simeon. Remember, Simeon didn't get a land portion. They're tucked in Judah. So he's king over Judah and Benjamin. And so Rehoboam gets Judah ready to fight Israel. He wants to take over the whole kingdom again, but God tells them no, not to do that. And so they stand down. So here's a map here of the division of Israel. So we have the northern kingdom of Israel in green, which covers 10 tribes, and the southern kingdom of Judah, which covers the 2 tribes. Let's look at chapter 12. Then Jeroboam built Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim and lived there. And he went out there and built Penuel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, now the kingdom will turn back to the house of David. If this people go up to offer sacrifices to the temple of the Lord at Jerusalem, then the heart of this people will turn again to their Lord, to Rehoboam, a king of Judah. And they will kill me and return to Rehoboam, king of Judah. So the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold. And he said to the people, you have gone up to Jerusalem long enough. Behold your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. And so he shows them 2 golden calves and tells them to worship these gods because these are the ones that brought them out of Egypt. Very similar to what we saw happen with Aaron while Moses was up on the mountain. Verse 29, and he set one in Bethel and the other he put in Dan. So you see on the map there where they're located. Then this thing became a sin, for the people went as far as Dan to be before one. He also made temples in high places and appointed priests from among all the people who were not of the Levites. So Jeroboam, God has just given him the 10 northern tribes, and he immediately falls into sin. He denies Yahweh because he doesn't want the people traveling to Jerusalem to worship Yahweh. So he sets up his own gods for the northern peoples to worship. And so in doing so, he not only makes it so that all the people are sinning, but then he goes and anoints priests to these made up gods. And these priests are not even from the Levitical tribe, which God had set aside to be priests. So Jeroboam is leading the people of the northern tribes away from Yahweh. A prophet then shows up and warns Jeroboam about his sin against God. Let's go down to chapter 13, verse 33. After this thing, Jeroboam did not turn from his evil way, but made the priests for the high places again from among all the people. Any who would, he ordained to be the priests of the high places. And this thing became a sin in the house of Jeroboam, so as to cut it off and to destroy it from the face of the earth. Chapter 14. At that time, Abijah, the son of Jeroboam, fell sick. And Jeroboam said to his wife, arise and disguise yourself, that it not be known that you are the wife of Jeroboam, and go to Shiloh. Behold, Ahijah, the prophet, is there. who said of me that I should be king over this people. Take with you 10 loaves, some cakes, and a jar of honey, and go to him. He will tell you what shall happen to the child." But when Ahijah heard the sound of her feet as she came in at the door, he said, "Come in, wife of Jeroboam. Why do you pretend to be another? For I am charged with unbearable news for you. Go, tell Jeroboam, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, because I exalted you from among the people and made you leader over my people Israel, and tore away the kingdom from the house of David and gave it to you, and yet you have not been like my servant David, who kept my commandments and followed me with all his heart, doing only with that which was right in my eyes. But you have done evil above all who were before you, and have gone and made yourself other gods and metal images, provoking me to anger. And you have cast me behind your back. Therefore, behold, I will bring harm upon the house of Jeroboam, and I will cut off from Jeroboam every male, both bond and free, in Israel, and will burn up the house of Jeroboam as a man burns up dung until it is all gone. Anyone belonging to the house of Jeroboam who dies in the city, the dogs shall eat. And anyone who dies in the open country, the birds of the heavens shall eat, for the Lord has spoken it. Arise, therefore, go to your house. When your feet enter the city, the child shall die. Moreover, the Lord will raise up for himself a king over Israel, who shall cut off the house of Jeroboam today. And henceforth, the Lord will strike Israel as a reed is shaken in the water, and the root of Israel out of the good land that he gave to their fathers, and scatter them beyond the Euphrates, because they have made their Asherim, provoking the Lord to anger. And he will give Israel up because of the sins of Jeroboam, which he sinned and made Israel to sin. So here God's saying, not only am I going to destroy the house of Jeroboam and lead somebody else to be king over Israel, but that Israel will be sent out of the land beyond the Euphrates. Let's go down to verse 17. Then Jeroboam's wife arose and departed and came to Tirzah. And as she came to the threshold of the house, the child died. And all Israel buried him and mourned for him, according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke by his servant Ahijah the prophet. Now the rest of the acts of Jeroboam, how he warred and how he reigned, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. And at that time, Jeroboam reigned, at the time that Jeroboam reigned was 22 years, and he slept with his fathers, and Nadab his son reigned in his place. So you see, I brought the chart back of the kings of Israel and Judah. So we'll use this as we go through First and Second Kings, just as a reference. And you see, I put a red check mark there, or an X mark, just to remind you that Jeroboam was a bad king. Let's look at verse 21. Now Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, reigned in Judah. Rehoboam was 41 years when he began to reign, and he reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city that the Lord had chosen out of all the tribes of Israel to put his name there. His mother's name was Naamah the Ammonite, and Judah did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and they provoked him to jealousy with their sins that they committed, more than all their fathers had done. So Judah also is turning away from the Lord via Rehoboam. Verse 23. For they also built for themselves high places and pillars and Asherim, and on every high hill and under every green tree. And there were also male cult prostitutes in the land. They did according to all the abomination of the nations that the Lord drove out before the people of Israel. In the 5th year of King Rehoboam, Shishak, king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem. He took away the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house. Now, the rest of the acts of Rehoboam and all that he did, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And there was a war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam continually. And Rehoboam slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David, and Abijam, his son, reigned in his place. So again, just like Jeroboam, Rehoboam was also a bad king. He was evil in the sight of the Lord, and because of that, the people were punished in having the king of Egypt come in and steal the treasures out of the house of the Lord and out of the king's house, so that all that Solomon had built up, all the treasures that Solomon had built, are now gone, taken out of the land. Let's get to the third section. Chapter 15. Now in the 18th year of King Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, Abijam began to reign over Judah. He reigned for 3 years in Jerusalem. And he walked in all the sins that his father did before him, and his heart was not wholly true to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father. Nevertheless, for David's sake, the Lord his God gave him a lamp in Jerusalem, setting up his son after him and establishing Jerusalem, because David did what was right in the eyes of the Lord and did not turn aside from anything he commanded him in all of his days of his life, except from the matter of Uriah the Hittite. The rest of the acts of Abijam and all that he did, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And there was a war between Abijam and Jeroboam. And Abijam slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David, and Asa his son reigned in his palace. So here you'll see, it's kind of funny how we walk through the different kings. It's going to jump back and forth through First and Second Kings both. It's going to jump back and forth between the kingdoms, and sometimes it'll stay on the kingdoms or on a specific kingdom for quite a while. And the reason it does that, it's trying to line up the time frames of these kings and how they overlap, but it gets a little funky along the way. So we're going to try to keep this as clean as possible by using the chart here on the left. So you can see here that we just dealt with Abijam, who is the second king of Judah after Solomon, so Rehoboam's son. And so now Abijam has died, and his son Asa is taking over in his place. In the 20th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Asa began to reign over Judah, and he reigned 41 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom, and Asa did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, as David his father had done. He put away the male cult prostitutes out of the land and removed the idols that his fathers had made, but the high places were not taken away. Nevertheless, the heart of Asa was wholly true to the Lord all his days. And there was a war between Asa and Baasha, king of Israel, in their days. And so here, thereafter, we have a little bit more about Asa. He pays Syria to break their covenant with Israel and removing their protection. And then Syria goes and captures many of Israel's northern cities. So Asa takes the emphasis off of his own fighting with Israel, between Judah and Israel, and redirects that by getting Syria to start attacking the northern tribe of Israel. The northern kingdom of Israel. Verse 23. Now the rest of the acts of Asa, all his might and all that he did, and the cities that he built, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? But in his old age he was diseased in his feet, and Asa slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David his father, and Jehoshaphat his son reigned in his place. So you see here, Asa gets a green check mark because he was a good king who followed after Yahweh. Let's get back. We're going to jump back to Israel now. Chapter 15, verse 25. Nadab, the son of Jeroboam, began to reign over Israel in the second year of Asa, the king of Judah. And he reigned over Israel 2 years. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and walked in the way of his father, and in the sin which he had made Israel to sin. Baasha, the son of Ahijah, of the house of Issachar, conspired against him, and Baasha struck him down at Gibbethon, which belonged to the Philistines, for Nadab and all Israel were laying siege at Gibbethon. So Baasha killed him in the 3rd year of Asa the king of Judah, and reigned in his place. And as soon as he was king, he killed all of the house of Jeroboam. So here's God's his punishment against the house of Jeroboam is issued through Baasha. He left the house of Jeroboam not one that breathed until he had destroyed it, according to the word of the Lord that he had spoke by his servant Ahijah the Shilonite. Excuse me. So there, after that, Baasha then reigns for 24 years, and he's an evil king. We then have his son Elah, who's the son of Baasha, who reigns 2 years and is also evil, and he gets killed by Zimri, who God uses to punish the house of Baasha because they were evil. So Zimri, who is also evil, takes over and rules a whole 7 days before the people of Israel take the throne back over, and in doing so, he commits suicide. At that point, there's two portions of the people that are following two different kings. We have Tibni and Omri, who are both declared king, and they ensue and involve themselves in a civil war. And so Tibni reigns for 5 years, and Omri reigns for 12 years. And during that time, Omri and his army kill Tibni, and so it's consolidated back to one northern kingdom. And that's where we leave off the kings of Israel for now. Let's get to the fourth section. Chapter 16. In the 38th year of Asa, the king of Judah, Ahab, the son of Omri, began to reign over Israel. And Ahab, the son of Omri, reigned over Israel in Samaria 22 years. And Ahab, son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Lord more than all those who were before him. And as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, he took for his wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. He erected an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he built in Samaria. And Ahab made an Asherah. Ahab did more to provoke the Lord, the God of Israel, to anger than all the kings of Israel who were before him. So here it makes it well known that Ahab's a bad dude. So you see all the bad kings that we've had in Israel. Well, Ahab is worse than all of them put together. And so Yahweh then raises up Elijah as a prophet, and Jezebel, who Ahab had married, ends up killing. She comes in as an evil woman who is worshiping all these other gods, especially Baal, and she kills all the prophets of Yahweh. And so Elijah is the only one left. And God sends Elijah to confront Ahab. Let's look at chapter 18, verse 17. When Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, "Is it you, you troubler of Israel?" And he answered, "I have not troubled Israel, but you have, and your father's house, because you have abandoned the commandments of the Lord and followed the Baals. Now, therefore, send and gather all Israel to me at Mount Carmel, and the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." So Ahab sent to all the people of Israel and gathered the prophets together at Mount Carmel. And Elijah came near to all the people and said, "How long will you go on limping between two different opinions? If the Lord is God, if Yahweh is God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him." And the people did not answer him a word. Then Elijah said to the people, "I, even I only, am left a prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. Let 2 bulls be given to us, and let them choose 1 bull for themselves and cut it to pieces and lay it on the wood, but put no fire on it. And I will prepare the other bull and lay it on the wood and put no fire on it. And you call upon the name of your God, and I will call upon the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire, he is God." And all the people answered, "It is well spoken." Then Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, "Choose yourselves 1 bull and prepare it first, for you are many, and call upon the name of your God and put no fire in it." And they took the bowl that was given to them, and they prepared it and called on the name of Baal from morning until noon, saying, "O Baal, answer us." And there was no voice, and no one answered. And they limped around the altar that they had made. And at noon Elijah mocked them, saying, "Cry aloud, for he is a god. He's either musing, or he's relieving himself, or he's on a journey, or perhaps he is asleep and must be awakened." And they cried aloud and cut themselves after the custom with swords and lances until the blood gushed out upon them. And as midday passed, they raved on until the time of the offering of the oblation. But there was no voice. No one answered. No one paid attention. Then Elijah said to all the people, "Come near to me." And all the people came near to him, and he prepared the altar of the Lord that had been thrown down. Elijah took 12 stones according to the number of tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord came, saying, "Israel shall be your name." And with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord. And he made a trench about the altar that as great as would contain 2 seahs of seed. So 2 big bags or big portions of seed. So it's a fairly decent sized trench. And he put the wood in order and cut the bowl to pieces and laid it on the wood. And he said, "Fill 4 jars with water and pour it on the burnt offering and on the wood." And he said, "Do it a second time." And they did it a second time. And he said, "Do it a third time." And they did it a third time. And the water ran around the altar and filled the trench also with water. And at that time, the offering of the oblation, Elijah the prophet came near and said, "O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known this day that you are the God of Israel, and that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, that these people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have turned their hearts back." Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering and the wood and the stones and the dust, and licked up all the water that was in the trench. And when the people saw it, they fell on their faces and said, "O Lord, he is God. Yahweh, he is God." And Elijah said to him, "Seize the prophets of Baal, let not one of them escape." And they seized them. And Elijah brought them down to the brook of Kishon and slaughtered them there. So Elijah has made it a demonstration for the people to prove that God, that Yahweh is the most powerful God, that he's the only one that can do these things. And in judgment of that, he gets the people to capture the prophets of Baal, and they are killed because of their loyalty to Baal, and they're leading people astray. Let's look at continuing on with Ahab's reign. So Elijah then flees from Jezebel's wrath after killing the prophets of Baal, and he travels 40 days and nights to get to Mount Sinai, and he's aided by the angel of the Lord in doing so. God then instructs Elijah to anoint new kings of Syria and of Israel, and God also tells him to go and find Elisha, who will succeed him as prophet. So soon thereafter, Syria starts a war with Israel, and God gives Ahab victory twice over it to sway his heart back to him. And yet Ahab strikes a deal with the Syrian king instead for more land and riches. Thereafter, Jezebel conspires to have a man killed to steal his land, some land that Ahab wanted. Jezebel comes up with a story to get this man killed so that Ahab can take his land. Let's look at chapter 21, verse 17. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, "Arise, go and meet Ahab, king of Israel, who is in Samaria. Behold, he is in the vineyard of Naboth, where he has gone to take possession. And you shall say to him, Thus says the Lord, Have you killed and also taken possession? And you shall say to him, Thus says the Lord, In the place where dogs licked up the blood of Naboth, shall dogs lick your own blood." All right, so that's important for what's coming up. God says to him, "In the place that dogs licked up the blood of Naboth, your own blood shall be licked up by dogs." Ahab said to Elijah, "Have you found me, O enemy?" He answered, "I have found you because you have sold yourself to do what is evil in the sight of the Lord. Behold, I will bring disaster upon you. I will utterly burn you up and will cut you off from Ahab, every male, bond or free, in Israel. And I will make your house like the house of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, like the house of Baasha, the son of Ahijah, for the anger to which you have provoked me, because you have made Israel to sin." And of Jezebel, the Lord said, "The dogs shall eat Jezebel within the walls of Jezreel." So here God's telling Ahab that he's going to cut off his family, just like he did with Jeroboam and Baasha, with those families. He's going to cut them off from the rule of Israel. So Israel and Judah then joined together to battle against Syria at Ramoth Gilead. But God uses a spirit to deceive Ahab and to lead him into that battle. And in doing so, Ahab dies. He gets shot with an arrow and dies in battle. And let's look what it says here in verse 37. So the king died and was brought to Samaria, and they buried the king in Samaria. And they washed the chariot by the pool of Samaria, and the dogs licked up his blood. And the prostitutes washed themselves in it, according to the word of the Lord that he had spoken. Now the rest of the acts of Ahab and all that he did, and the ivory house that he built, and all the cities that he built, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the kings of Israel? So Ahab slept with his fathers, and Ahaziah his son reigned in his place. And now to the final section of 1 Kings. This is chapter 22. Jehoshaphat, the son of Ahijah, began to reign over Judah in the 4th year of Ahab, the king of Israel. Jehoshaphat was 35 years old when he began to reign, and reigned 25 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Azubah, the daughter of Shili. He walked in all the ways of his father Ahijah. He did not turn aside from it, doing what was right in the sight of the Lord. So we have another good king in Judah. Yet the high places were not taken away, and the people still sacrificed and made offerings on the high places. Jehoshaphat also made peace with the king of Israel. And Jehoshaphat slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David his father, and Jehoram his son reigned in his place. Then back to Israel. Ahaziah the son of Ahab began to reign in Israel and Samaria in the 17th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and he reigned 2 years over Israel. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and walked in the way of his father, and in the way of his mother, and in the way of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin. He served Baal and worshipped him, and provoked the Lord, the God of Israel, to anger in every way that his father had done. So here's we come to the end of the book. Before we get to 2 Kings, we leave off with Jehoshaphat, who is a good king, and Ahaziah, who's an evil king. And so we'll see what happens with them next time. But in closing up 1 Kings, we see that Israel was split by the sin of Solomon. God allowed it to be split into the northern and the southern kingdom. And every king of Israel that we've seen so far has been an evil and wicked king, leading their people to serve other gods, because they don't want them going down to Judah to worship God in Jerusalem. And so they've led them to other gods. And Judah itself, even though it had good kings, it also had wicked kings. And even the good kings are allowing for the people in the land to be worshiping other gods. And so it leaves God in the corner. Israel and Judah, neither of them are following the commandments of God. Neither of them are holding up to the covenant which they made with God, to serve him and to follow in his footsteps and in his ways. And because of that, God can only allow this for so long. He's only going to continue to dwell in Jerusalem for so long. He's only going to continue to bless the people for so long, because they have turned away from him and are not walking in his ways. So we'll see how this, what happens with this as we get to 2 Kings next time. But if you have any questions, I'd love to hear them. Please post below. Thanks for your time tonight. Have a great day.